Hey,
What? What's up,
true voice
guys?
of reason. You're already here.
He said he's been waiting for
He's
this.
hardcore.
He is hardcore. True Voice of Reason has been like the best guy on my forum as well, which I'm getting ready to redo. I was going to try to do it this week, but you guys know my background looks a little different
Oh,
because
you're
my air
frozen.
conditioner upstairs went out.
That's
I have no
terrible.
air conditioner.
Perfect timing for the
Yes,
summer.
perfect timing for the ridiculously hot summer. Yeah, in Tennessee.
Nick, what are we talking
So
about tonight?
any super chats will go towards my air conditioner. I'm not lying.
tonight,
um,
tonight, Cameron and I are giving up our super chats. It's all going to Nick for his
I
air
need.
conditioner.
Y'all got any
That's where
more
I
than
do.
$100 super chats?
My Chiari build has just gone on permanent hold. So yeah, we're talking about something really cool. I think a lot of people are going to like this. We're talking about DSP versus passive crossovers, and I'm interested to hear because I don't think we're all going to agree all the time on everything. I think that we're going to have some disagreement sometimes because there are times where, yeah, I think passive can be better than active, and other times where I think active can be better than passive. But we're going to try to talk those, and I think you guys are going to have a lot of questions, so make sure to hit us up. Any super chats automatically get answered no matter what. Otherwise, we'll star them, and the ones that we can get to, we will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Cameron, it was kind of your idea to do this one. Maybe. That might not be true, but I feel like it was.
I'll take the credit.
Yeah,
Take it where I can get it.
Cameron, great topic idea.
Great
Head
topic.
us up.
So start us off.
Yeah, passive versus active. I'm just going to go ahead and I don't want to label myself one or the other, and I don't think anybody's going to hold me to it, but active, I'll at least say, is definitely the way of the future. I think the tech, in terms of implementation and in the real world practice, I think it's got a ways to go, although I think we have some good contenders and companies that are showing that they understand what the industry wants, like Acoustas with the AC650. I think devices like that are kind of the way of the future with an integrated amplifier, integrated filters, their own proprietary app, EQ, all built in, instant response. You enter the filter in, it's immediately there. You can do live sweeps that way. You can align your phase. You can do everything you need to do within their app, sitting on the couch with the measurement microphone out on a stand. I really think that's the way of the future. I think we'll talk about this, but there are obvious drawbacks. DSP can get really complicated depending on how your system is rigged up. If you've got 6 different amplifiers, a couple different processors, preamps, sources, that's not my speed. I'm not ready to commit to that personally, but I do really like the way that the AC650 integrates all of those things. And obviously there are some compromises with things like power output and things like that, but that's kind of where I fall. If I could live with only one device, it would be the AC650 because it's so simplistic and you're able to get such accurate results out of it. So
Well,
I just
and
got,
he's continuing to work on it. Like he just added some more updates to it
oh
and
yeah,
other things. So it's one of those things. I do like his I like everything about what they're doing over there because they've also told me some of the things that they're going to be doing in the future that I unfortunately can't say yet what that is. But I do like that. Here's the issue that I have with most of these units though that we've come across. One of two things. And there is something that I do want to mention later that I think a lot of people don't think about when they go active that I think is a huge con. But before we get to that, one of the cons with active that comes is you have a cost associated with amplifier. Now, amplifier power has come way down in price, and good amplifiers come way down in price, which is what makes DSP so much more attractive. However, you either have to buy a unit like the AC650, where you're limited to whatever power they give you, and limited to whatever DSP options they give you, or you have to buy something like a mini DSP or the Dayton DSP 408, and then you have to figure out what you're going to pair it with
yeah,
as far as amplifiers go, and then one for each channel.
yeah.
If you ask me, like, 10 or 15 years ago, what's the way of the future, like you were saying, Cameron, I would have said DSP, and I still believe it is. I think you're right, but I can't figure out for the life of me, at least in home theater, why electronics and stuff haven't gone to more pre-pro. Like, who cares about the stupid 80-watt amplifier in your AVR? Just give me a pre-pro with some great some RCA and XLR outputs. Give me both, please. And then, even in the commercial world, like, not everyone does DIY, I understand that, but why haven't speaker manufacturers gone to active speakers where they have a little 100-watt amplifier on the back of the speaker, RCA from your pre-pro, boom, plug it into the back of your speaker. There's like 1 or 2 manufacturers that do this at all, and I don't understand why. I know it's more expensive and everybody wants it as cheap as possible, but I don't know. I would have thought it would have taken over by now.
I have a theory on there, and you guys can tell me what you think about this. I think part of the theory, at least for home theater and other, even we'll say 2-channel music listening, is that they have to work with another company. Because most of these companies don't own the amplifiers. They don't design the amplifiers. They don't create the amplifiers. So they're going to have to work with a company like HypeX and then hope on their supply chain and hope on that, you know.
You can say that about the driver, though.
Yeah, but the drivers are usually designed specifically for them, and they have an order for X amount of drivers already, typically, you know. So I think it's less so on the drivers as it is for the amplifiers. The amplifiers, they have a whole lot less leeway as far as on the business side.
Maybe. I don't know.
I agree, yeah.
I thought maybe it was just tradition. People are just slow to change. I mean,
I think that is part of it too, because if you take a look at the preamp market, there's not a lot. Like if you go to Best Buy, for example.
Oh, you're never going to find one.
No, you won't. Even I don't even know that they have them even at their Magnolia centers, which is crazy. So like the pre-pros, and that's a really big thing that you need to have. Like if you're going to go surround sound, you need to have a preamp that can decipher your, you know, Dolby Atmos or whatnot. So, you know, I see that. Here's the biggest issue with me. Like if we're DIYing speakers, DSP has become really good. But most of the DSP fits in 1 of 2 categories. Category 1, really, really good DSP options, right? Like a lot of taps, a lot of everything, but extremely complicated. Most people can't figure it out. I'm thinking like Sigma Studios, right?
Yeah.
Amazingly powerful for like an everyday DIYer. Get ready to spend some months learning the program. It takes a while.
Yeah.
Or you get something like the Acoustos, which is very simple to use, but you're very limited in the DSP options. The Mini DSP is one of the only ones that I feel like is kind of like a mixture of both. It's pretty darn powerful, and it also is fairly easy to use. But I think that's another issue with DSP. I think DSP would be used a lot more if it was easier to use and understood more. I don't think a lot of people talk about it, so a lot of people don't know how to implement it properly.
Yeah, Douglas has a pretty good solution. He says Macintosh has a 7-channel with separate inputs for every channel. Could just have 1 amp, probably a cool $10,000, and that's it.
Yeah.
No,
there's a few of those out there.
He prefaced by saying extremely expensive. So
yeah.
Well, you know who else who's cheap? Buckeye amps.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Buckeye, and they're great amplifiers. Look up Buckeye amplifiers. They're used all the time in home theater, and you can pick the wattage you want. That's kind of the other issue too. Is like if you're doing a 3-way speaker with DSP, right? You don't necessarily need. Usually, when you buy an amplifier like an Emotiva or whoever, Buckeye or whatever, it's like a 7-channel, 250 watts per channel, 500 watts per channel, 5-channel. And you don't necessarily need 500 watts to your tweeter and your mid-range.
No, it's a huge waste.
It is. It is a huge waste.
That's kind of in the range of the point I was making, is that the tech really hasn't caught up to that. and it's such a small niche right now. We're kind of between a rock and a hard place in that regard, that there's so few people willing to use DSP that manufacturers are kind of thinking, well, we're not going to produce an amp that's, dedicated for this application. And so it's kind of a push pull in that regard. I think there's going to have to be a levee that breaks at some point where enough people adopt DSP that they can actually make those kind of products financially viable, because it's just niche companies that have the market cornered at the moment.
Well, that was my biggest complaint with the Acoustos. The Acoustos is a great amplifier. It has 10 outputs, but only 2 inputs. If I have 10 outputs, I want 4 inputs, or even more even would be great. If I could even go up to 10 inputs, I'd be fine with that. But you definitely need some inputs along with that. I'll be right back, you guys. You guys keep talking.
Yeah, I got a question for Cameron.
Go for it.
So, Cameron, by the way, guys, Nick just has to go deal with his air conditioner guy. So,
God bless him.
Here's a hypothetical for you when it comes to DSP versus passive.
Okay.
If you've got like an amateur DIYer, he sends you a message on your channel or something and says, "Hey, I'm gonna build a set of speakers. My budget is, say, $500 per speaker." Are you going to tell him to go active or passive?
Does the $500 per speaker include? Is that
yeah? Like he's got to buy either passive components, or you got to think, okay, he's got to buy a mini DSP. So maybe if it's 2-channel, he's got $1,000, and that mini DSP alone, I think they're like $270 or something like that.
I'm probably going to tell somebody to go passive. Not necessarily because I think designing one or the other is easier, but just in terms of simplicity. I know, and I'll probably say this at some point again tonight, but I think active honestly is a little more simple in some regards, but at the same time, I think there's a simplicity to passive crossovers, the plug and play aspect. If somebody's just doing a one-off build, it's really hard for me to imagine going active, to be quite honest with you. All those electronics are constantly tied to one set of speakers. Yes. Someone like us that's building them for YouTube maybe creates this distortion where it seems like, everyone is changing out speakers all the time. But I think in the real world, most people are living with a single set of speakers for the majority of time. And so I'd probably tell them to go passive for that reason and not be married to some specific set of amplifiers and pre's and products like that.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially the part about like it depends on the type of DIYer. Like you and I, we're always messing about, changing things out. But for somebody who wants to just build a solid set of speakers and kind of be done with it, even if they have the comprehension and maybe the space and everything to set up an active system, I just don't know that buying the active components and everything, it takes too big of a bite out of the budget, and then they're stuck with this kind of complicated setup. So I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah.
Can I say this? This is one thing, and I don't know where exactly you were, but I will say this. I think DSP can actually make DIYing much more accessible. Because assuming the DSP amplifier is easily accessible, okay? So we got to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So assuming they can get the exact amplifier you're getting, all you have to do is send them a file. And they upload it to it, and it's done. After they built the speaker, put the drivers in, they're done. And that's where I think like DSP really makes a lot of sense. And active is when people want to do that. There's really not much that they can get wrong except wiring. If they wire the woofer to the tweeter or something, then that would be problematic. But otherwise, that's a good thing about this. I think it could make it much easier. My number one complaint, like when I have someone doing DIY work, is I just don't understand how to read the crossover schematic. I don't know how to make it into a board. Yeah, and then they question afterwards, is it right?
Oh, yeah.
And we even talked about it last time about the microphone, like hooking up the microphone to it to double checking everything. Well, with a DSP, a lot of that guesswork is taken out of the equation.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah, I included a DSP save state from the Acoustos in my latest plans that I released for the Celestion H2Ws. And it's essentially exactly what you described. You download the plans. You can just upload this text file directly to the Acoustos. If your drivers are wired physically to the amplifier, you're ready to go. There's nothing in between them. And it's really, really simple. Unfortunately, we kind of come back to the idea, though, that that's extremely niche. You need that exact model of amplifier to make use of that file, but there are more generic files you can convert to and upload to any
Well,
DSP.
and let's clarify that to a certain degree too. I don't know what happened to your comment, Trump guy. I probably got blocked as spam for some reason. I don't know why. But we didn't block anything. That's just an automatic YouTube thing. Yeah. So what I would say this though is the reason why we say you want to have the same amplifiers, because when you're doing DSP work, you might boost some areas, you might cut some areas down, but all that has to do with the amount of amplification that you're giving it too. So if you start giving it more amplification than the DSP was designed to, some bad things can happen. Of course, you know, that
Oh, do
is
you
all
mean like if
determined.
you're adding a positive PEQ to something, or
Right, yeah, like let's say we're adding like a positive PEQ, or we're doing some phase stuff that's going on, and we're doing some of that to it, and then all of a sudden, instead of you giving it 50 watts that you're giving it 150 watts. It's just like any normal speaker, right? Well, if you start turning it up louder, you might start having issues that we didn't have because of that.
That's true. Social, I don't know if he's still here, but Social Sound Club said hi. This guy builds really cool speakers. He was talking about he preferred mini DSP a lot easier. Like I say, this guy builds a lot of studio monitor type stuff, so he's definitely used this technology pretty often. So he says he prefers mini DSP to Hypex. So
I've never used the Hypex. I've looked at
Me
those
neither.
Hypex amplifiers that have DSP on them. They're often like a 250 plus 500 watt 2-channel plate amplifier or something like that, if I remember right. And man, I've been tempted to buy those before, but I just never have.
they're very tempting in that they're so simplistic to be able to mount your amplifier directly to the speaker and go a step
great.
further. Yeah, and just
Yeah.
have it completely integrated.
Yeah,
But they're
a little
steep.
pricey.
Yeah,
Little
they're
pricey.
steep.
Can I say this though? And I don't know if you guys talked about this or not when I was gone from it. The biggest issue that I have with mini or with DSP in general, I don't care what we're talking about, whether they're active systems with the Hypex, probably less so with the Hypex amplifiers on them. But still, we already talked about. We talked a couple weeks ago that one of the issues with DIYing is that it can be hard to resell those speakers. Well, it's even harder when you've
Yeah.
created them with no passive crossover at all.
Yeah, that's true. You just got
Yeah.
a pretty box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean it's
I
true.
think-
Like even if you want to sell everything with it, like they still have to have a preamp or something, right? Like you know, it's a much harder sell.
I think
Yeah.
you basically, yeah, if you're doing an active speaker system, in some ways it's better too, Nick, because if you just plan, if one day I get rid of these, I'm just pulling the drivers out, detaching the
Yeah, that's
amplifiers
true.
and everything, then you still have your mini DSP box that's separate. You still have your amplifiers that's separate. You know what I mean? You don't have, like, when it's a passive speaker, it's like, geez, do I take this thing apart? I've done that. I've pulled apart perfectly good speakers, desoldered all the components because I'm so cheap. I'm going to save that $3
Me too.
capacitor. You know what I mean? It's like, what am I doing? Whereas with the active, you just unplug everything, and other than the drivers. So absolutely, you're not going to sell that speaker if it's an active speaker. You're not going to even give it to a friend probably, but it is a little more easier to disassemble. Yeah.
Oh, the things we talked about while you were gone.
Oh yeah,
He was gone. He was gone for like 30 seconds. I'm not sure if y'all covered
not
I
this.
was
gonna fill
gone
you.
for a long time, you weirdo.
Yeah,
I was gone
we're
for
not
so
telling
long.
you
The
anything.
HVAC technician said, "Can you please leave me alone?
Stop hovering.
Get out of here."
You're just dripping sweat onto him from above.
I feel bad because obviously didn't expect my air conditioning to go out, and my wife was out with the kids doing a water thing, and they had to leave early so that they could take care of this. So because I'm doing this with you guys. So here's the deal. I want to hear this, GNM. I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are on this because I hear this a lot. DSP or active speakers are a step ahead of passive speakers. And I hear this a lot. Like, DSP speakers sound better. Their DSP is always going to be better than passive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What are your guys' thoughts on this?
Well, I would say two things. He followed up with a comment, being able to adjust the crossovers per room is a big deal. I'd always be careful to adjust your crossover to the room.
I
I
agree.
think doing some EQ to help the room is okay, but your crossover generally shouldn't be dictated by the room. So I have a problem with that. But I do like that he said DSP is a step ahead of passive, because I do think it is incrementally better. It's a better performer.
Can
But
be.
I think we just have to be careful, because I hear a lot of people in the DIY realm go, "Oh, active is, it's the savior. It's just light years ahead. Anybody using that old-fashioned passive crap is, way behind the times." And I don't think it's like that either. I think passive is completely fine and it serves a lot of purposes. So yes, I'd agree with him. It is a step ahead. It's just not the life-changing revelation that a lot of people claim it is.
Well, I'll add to that. I'm actually really, it's positive, I think, that we see, and I'm not sure if you guys are going to be familiar with these companies, but Weem, they're a streamer. They started off as a really cheap streamer, kind of a little puck, but they've grown and expanded their product catalog. They started with an amplifier, but now they've got it's an EQable digital EQ that you can do room correction and things like that. It's for 2-channel, but it's got DSP built into it. I haven't used one personally.
So it's like it's preamp that goes before the amplifier?
No, it's fully integrated. So it's your streamer,
Oh,
your
it's
DAC,
an amplifier. Okay.
your amplifier. It's kind of like the Acoustas without being intended to power individual channels for each individual speaker. So you're sending out full range signal still, but you're able to EQ that. And I think one of the biggest issues when I hear just broadly passive versus active is with active, there's so many things. If you're able to measure your room, which hopefully you can, if you're listening in the same room very often, hopefully you can get at least one measurement and figure out what's kind of going on in there, because chances are you're going to have some room mode issues and some peaking and some phase issues, all kinds of issues, dips. Passive people, they have no way to remedy that. But if you add something like that into your chain, or if you're using that as your amplifier, I think being able to EQ down those bass modes and things like that, the room modes for in your bass region, is, I couldn't live without doing it, to be quite honest with you.
Cameron would die if he
Knowing
had base modes.
knowing knowing where mine are and how prominent they are, it's so audible every time I hook up a new pair of passive speakers that the first thing I do is go into the EQ and knock down 220.
It's so weird that we talk about this, right? Because we talked about, so first of all, Zoltergeist says, I have the Weem Ultra Streamer with the built-in room correction software is killer. So he's on board with you. We're talking, so me and Ryan started talking about surround sound systems. And it's weird because if we take a look at AVRs with Mr. Chompenstein talked about AVR amps and they work super great for speakers, subs, and bass shakers. If we take a look at AVRs, AVR market has continually gone downhill. And some of the things that I notice on them, like if you look at entry level AVRs now, no pre-outs, maybe for your front left and right, obviously for your subwoofer, but that's it. Maybe those two, and that's it. So even if you wanted to power your speakers separately, it's different. Now, what's interesting is they've added things like Dirac Live, which does have phase adjustment, which can do FIR and IIR filters for your room correction, and for the bass management system, so it can integrate your subwoofers with your room as well as your other speakers. It can do all the above. And you take a look at it and you're like, wow, that's an awesome project. Now, if someone took that same concept and added it to an AVR, but instead of 7-channel pre-outs, do 16-channel pre-outs, 18-channel pre-outs, whatever, where you could then do your treble and your mids for each speaker, and then digitally do your crossover. I mean, I think that would be an unbelievable product, especially for home theater. It would be killer.
But only DIYers would buy that.
I don't think so.
I think there'd be enough
I think a lot
use.
Because if you think about how an actual theater works, it's just like that. But in actual theater, they're DSPing everything. Everything's DSP'd with amplifiers. So my point being, the more people that are building these
passive,
the speakers, they're not using passive components. They're using active crossovers.
Okay, so this is what I was saying. 10 or 15 years ago, I would have thought that's where it would have gone, and we would buy speakers from Best Buy that have 2 input terminals or a plate amp on the back or something. You know what I mean? I think that's what you're getting at.
Well, I don't even want the plate amp necessarily. I mean, you can do a plate amp on the back if you want to. That's fine. It doesn't really matter where the amplifier is. But yeah, like that's the whole point. The speaker manufacturer does less. They just design the box basically now, right? I mean, and then your software does rest.
The speaker designer would still have to have
The crossover points.
DSP settings.
They can, yes, but I'm saying that they wouldn't necessarily have to because the software now can figure out most of that for you.
Oh, maybe.
Well, because it affects your room correction. So the only thing it would really need to do is level management and crossover points.
Yeah,
and
but
then
the software, I don't think the software is at a point where it can figure out crossovers. I mean, is it really gonna? Yeah.
No, I agree with that. So what I'm saying is, the speaker manufacturer would give the crossover point and the level management, and say like these are the 2 things you need to do. And actually, the software could do the level management if it really wanted to, but as long as you put those 2 things in when you designed it, or even if you said this is the speaker I have and the software knew. Yeah. But my point that I'm getting at though is like that's where it seems like it should be going, and it's not. It's going the opposite direction.
Yeah, I agree. I thought we'd be far more down the active road. I thought manufacturers, like I thought Klipsch would have, a passive speaker lineup and an active speaker lineup. And yeah, you would pay more for the active one, but they would come with little plate amps or a box where, all the amplifiers and everything were in it or something, and we're not. I'm surprised. It's still, you go into your average Best Buy or even a high-end audio store in a big city center, every speaker in there is a passive speaker.
Just about. Focal has done some really cool active stuff. B&W has done some really cool active stuff, but we're talking about like $50,000 to $100,000 speakers. So
you know what I think is funny? It's hilarious because really, if we take a look at where DSP has really taken off at, is Bluetooth speakers.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of like the cheapest junk. Yeah, it's like where DSP has taken off, like the high end stuff. They're like, no, we're still gonna stick passive. It's crazy when you think of it like that.
It's totally backwards from where I thought we'd be. Okay, I gotta ask a question. I did a video on this a long time ago, one of my first videos, and it was not well received. So, is active easier to design than passive?
No.
Yeah, to put an answer,
no.
Single word answer. I'm not good at these. No.
Okay, that was the point of my video. A lot of newbies to the club, for some reason they think active is easier. They get to go into the software and go 2000 hertz. Oh, I heard Linkwitz Riley is good. I'll take that one. Oh, I want steep filters because apparently that protects my tweeter. So I'm going to pick 96 dB per octave, and now I'm done, right?
Yeah. Wait, is that not how you do
it? Not even close. Yeah.
No, you're right. And that's always been my biggest pet peeve with active systems is you hear a lot of people that even have, and I've heard people comment on how much better active is that have had no experience with it at all.
Yeah. Oh, we just lost you. We just lost you, bud.
I think you may have come unplugged. That's what it sounded like.
There, you're back.
And we're back.
Anyway,
your active microphone quit. We lost you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Cameron.
So I actually just saw this on a forum today, and I see this almost every single day. I think it's becoming a trope that I say this every week, but I see a lot of stuff on forums. And one of the biggest things is someone will have a beautiful set of speakers they're showing off. People will start asking questions. How are the crossovers? Oh, they're all active. Do you have any measurements? No, they're active. Yeah. And they'll give the crossover points. So, and I see that. I've seen it way too many times to remember. So
Absolutely.
what that's implying is this person believes, no, I don't need a measurement microphone because I went active. I'm able to just program them, and they somehow magically are all in phase, attenuation, timing reference. All that's fixed by the magic of DSP. But I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls that a beginner may think, do I want to learn how to wire and read impedance, all these complicated electrical engineering problems? No, I'm just going to go active.
Yeah.
And, you know,
And some of these speakers are expensive. They're using
oh,
like
yeah.
$500 woofers and stuff, and they're like,
Yeah,
"But I have an
purify
active
stuff.
crossover."
Yeah,
Yeah,
purify woofers every time. And it's like,
yeah.
and they spent a lot of money on their DSP. And they've got really, really nice gear, but it's very likely none of it's properly integrated, sadly.
So I don't agree with this. This is active makes speaker builders lazy.
Well,
I don't
some.
think that's true. I think it can absolutely, but I think once again it comes down to not understanding. Like if you don't own a measurement microphone, don't go active. Period.
Yeah, don't design
Don't go active.
speakers.
Yeah, at all.
Well, don't design speakers. Well, build someone else's or whatnot.
Yes.
Design.
Stimson J. Cat said it perfectly. I mean,
Oh, hold on. Oh, go ahead. What do you want to say? No, go ahead.
I was just going to read out his comment because he basically said exactly what I'm thinking on this subject. It isn't easier to design. You still need the measurements. You still need to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where I think we get to a lot of people that active. They just think exactly what you say. You're just going to put whatever in the software, and it's going to magically work, and it's going to sound good. I'll put a bass hump in if I want to create my bass, whatever. And what they don't realize is that when you take measurements with an active system, you have to find out what your impulse response is wherever you're listening at. And then you have to add delay to your drivers so that they each start at the same time. Otherwise, if you don't add that delay, you're going to have a lot of phasing issues. So it's the same thing what we're doing with passive crossovers. With passive crossovers, we're also affecting that phase relationship to make sure that the sound's coming out at the same time. It's interesting because I do think you're right. I do think a lot of people that want to get into active don't realize that in a lot of ways it's actually, and it can actually be more complicated than passive.
Yeah, I mean, things like deriving your Z offset and things like that, I think can be a little easier. And in fact, I still use the same method that I use to design passive speakers. I throw it into XM, so I get a really good. XM will give you the offset in inches. I convert that over into time. That's still the same way that I do it, rather than doing a more complicated active method. Excuse me, I've got a fly in here.
I
So-
was wondering what you're doing.
I'm fighting myself. So yeah, I still carry over some of the same things that I learned just out of habit from passive crossover design into the active realm. But yeah, it could be much more challenging to do all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is so Brian Steele's talking about something that I wanted to get to. When you take a look at programs like Sigma Studios, they have all kinds of great things that you can implement, including things like this. And Brian says with Bluetooth speakers, they also use DSP, which he mentioned earlier is on the same chip that the Bluetooth is on. So that's the reason why you see DSP on it, to improve bass performance at lower levels. And then he goes on to talk about it. But how that works is, and you can implement this in that program, Sigma Studios, if you're willing to learn it. It's very powerful, but it's not easy to learn. When you're at a certain voltage, I'm pretty sure it does it by voltage, it will play that, like, say, plus 6 decibels. But as you turn that voltage up, that plus 6 starts to go down and down and down and down until it's like negative 10. So it allows the speaker to get louder, but the bass performance goes down in order for it to go louder, because that particular driver, I guess in this particular case he's talking about 2 3/4 inch driver, can't perform that much bass at loud levels, but it can produce a lot of bass at lower levels because it hasn't hit its excursion limits yet. So DSP is really cool for those types of things, and you can do that with any type of speaker that you want to build. So if you had maybe some 18-inch subwoofers that you really wanted to pound with your DSP, you could do that. Even some 5-inch woofers, you could do that like up close. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's where
Yeah.
DSP is, I would say, a step ahead of passive. You can do things so easily that you can't do with passive.
So I don't think he's understanding us. He says you guys
Well,
are really lost on this topic as you demonstrate how active makes things easier to make mistakes. I don't think anyone said that.
Well,
Did you
I
guys say
actually,
that?
I think I created a caveat earlier on. I said I'm going to say things are easier in the active realm, but I'm also going to say that things are easier in the passive realm in some ways. So, I mean, I think we kind of covered that aspect, and that there are easier things to do regarding each of them. But if you're saying it's easier to make mistakes going active, I
I
think I
Yeah, I
would
think
think
I
you
agree.
think
can
what
make
we were
mistakes
trying to
passively.
yeah, I think what we were trying to clarify is that a lot of people that start active don't realize what you need to do to create a proper speaker. And so it's easy for them to make mistakes if they don't know any better. But that's the same with a passive crossover. Like if
Yeah,
you don't
either way.
know, yeah, if you don't know
That's
to
why.
start with measurements, you're gonna make mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. Both
Yeah,
are
Sorry,
both
Ryan.
have the same pitfalls.
I think
Whether
it's passive just has such a higher barrier to entry. If you're going to be buying components and soldering them together and things like that yourself, that there's a better chance. And this is all random, but I think there's a better chance that you have a grasp on speaker design than if you were to go and buy a DSP. I think there's a much greater chance that the person just randomly buying a DSP knows less about speaker design than someone that's trying to go the passive route. Obviously, that's not a rule, but I think it's just so much easier. You think, I don't know anything about speaker design. I'm told that this DSP can do everything. You buy it. Oh, I know what filters are. I'll apply those filters. Oh, I know what attenuation is. I'll apply some attenuation. I think, okay, now I'm done. You don't know what you don't know, and that your phase is all off. All kinds of issues there. So, I mean,
well, and for years we've had, like many years, we've had online calculators. We've even had pro audio active boxes, like well before the DSP, the mini DSP, where you could plug everything in, and then just with dials, like you could select this crossover, this frequency, this slope and stuff like that. I remember those were around in like the 90s and stuff like that, and I think they just kind of reinforced to people that, oh, you can just plug this stuff in, and you just never could. That wasn't ever a thing, but they
yeah.
So
exist.
another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when you do DSP, you are still adding other issues that people don't really realize. So, for example, if you're DSPing your low end and your bass, which most people are, whether they're using active or passive, most of the time, like if you're talking about a subwoofer that's going to be active no matter what, but you affect your group delay. So if you're one of these people that's like, I need low group delay, and you're going to put a sealed subwoofer in a room and then you DSP the heck out of it, well, you added group delay, whether you realize it or not. So DSP does have other effects that you got to think about as well. You know, it will affect your phase relationship with your drivers. And the cool thing is you can use programs what is that program I use? You know, I can't think of the name, but you can
Rephase?
do rephase. Yes, you can use rephase to take a measurement of a tweeter, for example, and you can input that into your program, and then you can then decipher linear phase and tell it what slope you want it to have. You can actually define what you want it to look like at the end, and then it will then adjust all of your phasing depending on how many taps you have available in the DSP to give you that nice, amazing response at the end. And a lot of people really like that. It's some of the things that I think it is what more advanced users use with DSP for, and I think things like that are phenomenal to use, especially in a room if you wanted afterwards to do an in-room response with that.
Yes. Walter asks, can I add a high pass filter or subsonic filter for my subwoofer powered by an IEMA B07 amp with a cheap DSP like TSA 1701? I've looked it up here. I don't have time to read this entire sheet, but they say digital three-way, two-unit, two-way
It should have
crossover.
one on it. Yeah.
Yeah, bass enhancement. So that leads me to believe that as long as you can set those filters to whatever values you'd like, that yes, you could create a high pass. It could probably do quite a bit more than that as well. So
Well, the B07 has one on it. So and I don't know what's going on. I've never used the B07 that I can remember, but it has right here subwoofer frequency. So where you can select the subwoofer frequency, the subwoofer volume.
that's his low pass, right? He's wanting to create a subsonic filter to high pass his subwoofer.
Oh, a subsonic filter on top of
Yeah.
that. Oh, yeah. It's like
Yeah.
for ported sub. Gotcha.
Yeah, for cone excursion, I'm assuming. So
You know, this is where I'm going to go back to. If it was me, I wouldn't even use that amplifier. I'd go to a Relix website and buy their 2.1 DIY amplifier. It's pretty inexpensive, and if you use their DSP software, you can add a high pass to the subwoofer. You could, add a low pass, whatever low pass is best for that subwoofer. You can do all that for it. And for me, why keep buying and adding two when you could just get one unit that does it all?
fair. Yeah, Stimson says crappy calculators that didn't account for varying impedance. LOL. Yeah, that's the crux of the online crossover.
All right, so I'm gonna
passive ones that like do that as well, and they're terrible.
Yeah,
I'm gonna ask you guys a question that everyone wants to know. If you had someone gave you drivers, I don't care what drivers they are, okay? They gave you drivers, and they say, "Oh, I want to talk about JC Hillen. He is right. JC Hillen is right. I use a PC, so endless ways."
Yeah.
I was talking to Brian Zhang, who's a master with DSP, and he uses this little Sound Blaster 7.1 channel output card to make these amazing stereo three-way speakers all the time. Just fantastic. I love seeing what he does every year, and he uses, I think it's like Equalizer APO. So
yeah. Yeah, there's a ton of free EQ software for PC too, even if you're running passive speakers and that your PC is your source. There's so much EQ you can do for free on a PC.
All right, so here's the question. Someone gave you drivers, and I don't care what drivers they gave you, and they said, "All right, make me a pair of speakers. Make them for someone else. Are you going active or are you going passive, and why?"
This is kind of what I asked Cameron when he left. But
well,
we both kind of figured passive. It kind of depends on budget, but
what are you doing, Nick?
I'm going passive 100%.
Yeah.
Because here's the deal. Like, I don't care if it's for me, maybe active, but if it's for someone else, I'm going passive because I don't know what their system's going to look like in 2 years. I don't know what their system's going to look like in 3 months. So if they decide that they want to use them in home theater, they can put them in their front stage of home theater. If they later want to put them on their desk, they can put them on their desk. If they later want to put them in their workshop, they can put them in their workshop. And they can hook it up to whatever the heck they want, and they're done with it, right? Like passive all the way. I think active really becomes just an individual love preference in the essence that, like, if you're going to make an active system, it's for you specifically. And that environment that is going to be
someone who likes to tweak rather than set and forget. If you have active, you're probably gonna tweak. Even like 2 years from now, you're gonna be like, "No, I think
how about I turn 1 kilohertz down 1 decibel?"
Yeah, exactly.
With a Q of 0.4, I've definitely found that to be true myself. My taste changes on a daily basis. When I'm running active speakers, I can come in, I might change. There's 10 different things I might mess with on a daily basis. So I definitely think it's for the tinkerer, someone that can't sit still, someone that wants to constantly get the most or try to improve or change or experiment with a single set of drivers.
I agree. Gift speakers are always passive unless active is built into the speaker themselves. And you know what? That would, like, if there was an active little plate amp and they were desktop speakers, I would only do active, though, if they were designed for a specific use case. Like, for example, they were designed for desktop speakers. Because I see too many, like, I have some active pair of speakers in that room over there that are the Dayton Audio M6s. They're active speakers, 6-inch woofers. They're big. And so you would think that they're designed for like this really big, but they're really not. They're designed to be like, because they have the DSP sets in a way that if you turn them up too loud, it cuts everything off. So they're really designed to be more near field than anything else, maybe in a small room, but nothing bigger than a small room. And really, when you DSP speakers, you're DSPing them for the environment that you think you're using them in.
Yeah, that's why I'm such a big fan. I don't want to talk about, I'll go over it all again, but that's why I'm such a big fan of the hybrid method of having at least some sort of EQ at your disposal if you're using passive speakers. 'Cause we know we can get passive speakers to sound really, really good, but the designer can't do anything about your room. And ultimately, that's going to dominate the low frequencies in some way. So,
Hey, I got a personal question for you both. I recently, as you know, I played with the Dayton DSP 408, and I did a video for it, and I had a few questions about, are there any other options? And I could really only come up with that and the mini DSP in terms of a simple little box that you can plug in and go. Like, I'm not talking about using your computer or built into an Acoustos or anything like that. Am I missing any options? Why aren't there more little boxes that we can hook up and do DSP?
Well, I think that's the problem, right? Like, there's a bunch of DSP chips, but most of them all use Sigma Studios. And Sigma, it's the software that's the issue more than anything else, right? Like, you can buy a bunch of board DSPs and board amplifiers from China. They're usually cheaper DSP, but you use Sigma Studios, and most people are not going to spend the time to learn Sigma Studios. It's not something that you just pick up and you're like, oh, this is simple.
yeah, I mean,
Why
Ryan,
isn't there more options like mini DSP?
you need to buy an Astrovan and get into car audio because car audio has this figured out big time. I mean, there's no shortage of DSP options for car audio there are just so many that I see that we don't have for home audio for 2-channel stereo.
Should I look into them? Can you port them over to home audio?
Well, I don't see why not. They just work off 12
Yeah,
volt, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
you
don't
should.
see why you couldn't just run them off 12 volts.
Okay, I'll look
I mean,
into that.
I haven't looked into that, but that would be a possibility. I don't know that they would be, and I would be interested because I haven't looked into car audio a lot, but a lot of the DSP programs I see that like simplify things, because that's kind of the issue with DSP, right? There's a fine line between Sigma Studios, which has everything you could possibly do, but it's extremely complicated for most people, versus something like the Acoustos, which is very simple to use, but has like no real options. And so I'd be really interested to see where some of these car audios fall on that line. Are they more towards the Acoustos line, where they really only care about, the timing and then parametric EQ? Or are they more like where you can start doing things like linear phase, where you can add things like these bass boosts that we were talking about, the bass limiters, etc. It would be very interesting
I
to see
did
where they
see
go.
I did see somebody posted in the comments that you can use Sigma Studio with the Dayton box. So I might give that a whirl. I don't know if that'll actually work, but I mean, maybe I can squeeze some more performance out of it.
I'd be
You
interested to see
definitely
how,
could. If I
yeah,
mean, but I think I think they're going to be low. I think it's going to be a 1701 in that. Do you know if it's a 1701 in it?
Yeah, I think it's a pair of them because of the ins
Yeah.
and outs. But yeah, it's not a super powerful box. Like if you want to put 30 bands of EQ on it and IIR and yeah, you're just not going to do it with that box. But
yeah,
Marty
said, yeah.
J. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he says most of the software can be downloaded and tried before you buy the product, which would be immensely helpful before you shell out some money for one of those. So
yeah, definitely.
at least just to get an idea of the capability. Yeah, car audio is a perfect use application. It's almost mandatory to use DSP for sound quality in car audio. Even if you're just doing SPL, there's benefits to it. But yeah, cars are such a terrible environment to get good sound in. That DSP, those guys have converted a long time ago. Even amateurs are all using DSP in car audio. So kudos to them. They hopped on the bandwagon. They're showing no signs of slowing up.
So I think with to answer your question though, to go back to your question about the DSP, I think most DSP for home has gone more towards Dirac or Durac, however you want to say it. I mean, heck, you can even get mini DSP now with Durac on it.
Yeah, but it doesn't do crossover design. Like it,
Oh, yeah.
for myself, I don't like I don't need DSP to really flatten my room out. I need it to do speaker design. And there's only so many products that'll do that, it seems.
And I think that's where I'm getting at, though. It seems like what we were talking about earlier is we would think that's where the industry was headed towards,
Yeah.
and it hasn't. It seems like though the industry's shifted towards, hey, we're going to keep passive crossovers, but instead we're just going to fix your room with something like Durac.
Okay, so Stas Audio obviously saw my review.
some,
Oh,
some guy named Stas says you guys should just use a potato and DSP with that. It would be better than the one that Ryan just reviewed.
Yeah, it didn't. Spoiler
So-
alert: it didn't go so well.
this is, by the way, this is the guy who creates the Acoustas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Stas-
maybe I should buy that product.
So it's you want to hear something funny? This was between Cameron and I. Cameron, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I'm going to say it on air. You guys get behind the scenes look. Oh no. So I was talking to Cameron, and I was like, oh yeah, I just talked to Stas today. We talked on the phone, and we were talking for a while, and I said that's pretty cool that he put his name. I said that must be why he called it Acoustas. Acous, and then Stas,
yeah.
his last name. And Cameron goes, oh, I never thought of that. I was like, what? It's literally the name.
Yeah. I'd still be trying to get the pieces to fit together. I'm a little slow.
No, I just thought it was funny. Nate Jones asked, this is a good question. What about the argument that it's better to focus on a high-quality 2-channel DAC and amplifier? I'm still using a mini DSP 4x10 HD on one of my systems, but have been told the DAC quality is not that great.
Man,
So you're
I don't
saying
know
it's
about that.
better to have the DAC and the amplifier than the actual... I don't agree with that.
I get this kind of thing all the time. I mean, I remember a coworker and I
I guess
arguing
it kind of
about.
depends.
He said the most important part of your system is the source. Meaning the CD player or whatever, right? Like you get this kind of stuff, and people get all worried about electronics and DACs and blah 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 blah, and it's like they're looking at total harmonic distortion that's like 120 dB down and stuff like that. And I gotta remind people all the time, the speaker is the biggest source of distortion and problems, bar none. Like, yeah, go ahead, find something with a better DAC quality, but if it means you can't tune your speaker as good, that's the problem. Like, EQ that speaker properly, get the crossovers done properly, get good drivers. That's where the money should be spent, is in the speaker, pretty much 99% of the time.
And I think we all believe in, that eventually there's a diminishing returns.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah. Eventually, you should
There's-
focus
there-
on the DAC.
Well, and the truth of the matter is, though, with a DAC, though, we got to ask ourselves, like, have you gotten to the part of the diminishing returns already? After a
Oh, I see
certain,
what you mean. Yeah.
after a certain thing, you're got to ask yourself, like, am I actually getting that much better sound quality out of my DAC than what I was? And I don't know what this particular DAC is capable of, so I can't, so I can't say specifically this is the case. But typically, if your DAC's pretty darn decent, and if your source also isn't going to push your DAC, that's going to be another issue. But, all those are going to line up. And I think most of the time with most DACs, you're pretty close to the diminishing returns aspect, much more than you would be with your DSP.
Yeah, big time. I think this is like a gate, and I don't know that whoever has suggested this to him was doing that, but I see a lot of gatekeepers doing this, talking about, I'll never go active because I don't want all the digital to analog conversions in those cheap devices and this and that, and they'll put down the tech that's in there because they own some $5,000 DAC, some $10,000 DAC, some integrated Macintosh product that they could never be bothered to separate with. I mean, you can, if you're curious about the performance, Google it. It's probably on Audio Science Review, or someone has done objective measurements of whatever DAC you've got, or if not, the integrated chip that's in there, and just look at the performance and compare them to other things. I mean, like I think Nick and Ryan both have said, like you get to the point of diminishing returns pretty quickly, and after that, it's all subjective hearsay whether you can hear a difference in the distortion profile and things like that. So I'd say research what you've already got and don't rush out to buy anything else.
Yeah, I think the 4x10 HD is probably pretty good. I'd be amazed if you can hear a difference with a better product. I mean, that's not to say don't do it. I mean, I'll always pick a more superior electronic component if I can, but
Same.
I wouldn't panic
Yeah,
about it.
you just always ask yourself, where do you think your best upgrade is? And I don't think that the DAC would be the first place where I would consider upgrading. Probably not.
Yeah.
In that particular case. So here's an interesting thing, Ryan. I am getting ready to use that Acoustos in a coming up project, but when I'm done with it, I'm sure I could send one over to you for so you can try it out. You got to send it back though.
It's a it's a it's a DSP amplifier combo. Am I
Integrated.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it has DSP outs as well, so you could hook it up to other amplifier as well. So I think it has, if I remember correctly, has 6 powered outputs. Those are each rated. So technically, this is the one thing I love Acoustos, but the one thing is 50 watts is per channel is not really true. 50 watts per channel is the max of what it's capable of, but with the power supply, I think if I remember correctly, I'd have to watch my review. It's like 30 or 35 watts per channel is what it actually gives out. But then it has a couple passive outputs as far as non-powered outputs that you could then run to another amplifier. So
We
if you have
actually-
a
Put those on your
subwoofer.
woofer or something. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually looked at this a couple weeks ago because we spent like 10 minutes trying to figure out what was on the back before we looked it up. And there were numerous, I think there were 6 or 8 outputs between RCA, there was coax out or optical out. There were tons.
But can you program all
Every
of them, or,
yeah, any output is programmable the same way all of the active channels are
like
programmable.
independently programmable?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, with
that's
with
pretty good.
15 band EQ per channel. So and that goes.
Not to turn this into a Kustos commercial, but
It will be.
but how many inputs? Is it like, or what kind of input? Is it Bluetooth input? Is it
You've got Bluetooth is the top. You've got optical. You've got digital coax, and then you've got HDMI, I believe, and USB-C. Maybe not HDMI, but you've got USB-C. It's a little too far away for me to see the sources on mine. I only use optical and sometimes Bluetooth, so I should probably know them a little better. But tons of inputs.
That would be actually an amazing product for a desktop setup.
For desktop, you cannot beat it. I'm convinced of that. For far field listening, like my living room, I'm driving my Celestion H2Ws. I've driven every pair of passive speakers I've had in here in the last 5 months off of a single channel off of one of those.
Yeah. Nice.
If you want more SPL, obviously, but
Here's the Acoustos. And then on the back, it uses Phoenix style connectors.
Yeah.
And then on the back, it has an optical output and an analog output. And then it has optical in, coax in, and USB in. It does not have RCA in, which is one of the things I'm not as big. So you have to use. This is my new kitten.
So you need a digital.
Say hi. Look, you're on the screen.
Kitten Cameo.
Kitten Cameo.
Well, I appreciate that, and to all the listeners, I've seen your comments about different options and stuff like that, so I appreciate that. I'm gonna, after the show, I'm gonna go back into the comments and write down some of those, like the Tom and T tracks that somebody mentioned, and a couple others. So I'll find them in there and write them down. It was an honest question, and I appreciate the feedback. So.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I got the same offer. If your timing doesn't line up, I'm happy to send you mine when I get onto another passive build or something, and let you toy with it.
You can't have mine because he engraved mine.
Oh wow!
You can't have mine either.
He literally engraved it, and he said like when it came out, it's number 11 of 25 built.
Wow, that thing's
Super
invaluable.
cool.
It's priceless.
It is priceless. I actually wanted to sell. Someone like wanted to buy it from me, and I said it's priceless. And then they told me what they had in their bank account, and I was like, that doesn't even cover like a brand new one. So no.
True Voice of Reason asked about our Chiari build, if we're going to use it in that build, and no, we are sticking to passive because we got to transport. I'm not going, but Cameron and Nick have to transport their speakers around.
And
Um,
probably yours.
yeah, and
You,
mine, and then set them up at the thing and everything. So passive points for passive. I mean, it's just simple, right? You just plug it in and
it
away you
We
go.
really
can't
is.
argue with our own plans.
Yeah.
It's just much easier. I mean, especially when you go to a competition like that. It's just easier to set up unless you are there for it. And that was kind of one of the things that me and Ryan and Cameron were talking about, because that question came up, like, should we consider going passive or consider going active on the build, because it would maybe speed things up in some ways. And the answer was no, we better not, because Ryan can't be there, and if we set it
I'll
up
tweak his settings
incorrectly or
on
something.
purpose, and he'll definitely lose.
I think
Where
if I
did his
was doing
Twitter go?
this, if I was doing this build for myself, like I wasn't shipping it out or something, I would definitely go active on this one. I think. Yeah, I'd
Same.
probably buy one of those Acoustas's and
I,
just go
I
for it.
would, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd have it up and running in an afternoon with the Acoustas, and I'm certain it
Yeah.
would sound great. So
So I'm assuming GNM is talking to you, Ryan. He said I can send you the mini DSP HD. It's the baby one, not the 4x10.
Oh, Gene, I don't. I could buy a product. I appreciate the offer, but I don't want listeners and viewers to have to send me stuff. But I really appreciate that. Unless you want it tested, I think I did say in my thing, if anybody, or maybe I cut it out of the video, but if anybody has a DSP box they want me to review, and you could send it to me and I'll send it back. But I'm tied up at the moment, so don't send me anything right now. Yeah.
She's trying to get on the keyboard.
what's she typing?
I don't want to know. I don't want to get banned for whatever you type. See, I don't know how to spell. I'm barely 2 pounds.
We've reached the end of our hour. Ryan,
Oh yeah.
what's next on your channel? What'd you do recently, and what have you got coming up?
Well, I did just post that Dayton DSP 408 review. Spoiler: it wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. I'm gonna hang on to it, but I'm not excited about it. And then I just announced, meh. And then I just announced. Well, we all kind of announced, but I put something on my channel about the Chiari build that we're all gonna be doing. So, yeah,
Cool.
I'm excited for that.
I have the tweeter here. I'll show it off while we're talking about it.
Nick's always got a driver right by
I
his
know.
desk. He's always
He's
like,
in the
"Hey,
hallway,
check it
and he's
out."
still got props.
I'm in the hallway with but we showed this off beforehand because we were wondering if we could take the faceplate off, because it's one of the truncated frames, but the midwoofer is not truncated.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little more interesting to mount. So we were talking about how to mount that. Yeah, sorry. That's the end of just showing off. So I don't know if any videos are going to be coming out, because it depends if my air conditioner got fixed. The guy was fixing it. I think he might have fixed it. Dr. M's role is right. He said, did you talk about equalizer APO? We did talk about that a little bit. And in my current soon-to-be build of my pinball machine, I'll probably be using equalizer APO, although it's on some that already have passive crossovers, so it'll be just mainly for equalizer. But equalizer APO with a nice 7.1 sound card is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going to have any videos out anytime soon. I am going to be testing, though, for those of you that like home theater. I got a new triple laser projector coming in. That will be out, I think, on the 29th, so about 11 days from now. It's the Dengbei MP1 Max. So that's going to be pretty cool. It'll be interesting to find out how it compares, especially to some of the other ones that I've been recently comparing. So I'm interested to find out how well it does.
Cool. Very cool. Well, I've got and they have a name now, the Bianco 10s. Chiari, it doesn't roll off the tongue like Chiari, but Italian name nonetheless. The Bianco 10s are a super budget home theater, 2-channel stereo, whatever your bag is. Man, I got the crossovers done. I'm just trying to get the video edited, but I am absolutely floored with how good they sound. I really didn't know what to expect after I got them wired up, and I could not be happier. So excited to get that video edited up for you guys, get some plans made for it. If you are on a budget and you're doing your own home theater, building out a bunch of speakers, these might be the one for you. So I'll have some measurements and things like that to include in there for you guys that are curious. So,
And I know quite a few people have actually bought your other build, and I'm really interested for people. By the way, when you guys build any of our builds, share them with us because we'd love to share them on the live show or on our channels and other things. So definitely share those with us. Gene M asked a great question, and this might be a good video topic for us at some time. Speaking of truncated frames, any plans for tips or tricks on routing irregular shaped frames? Looking at this FoonTech tweeter, we'll consider that. None of you have a video right now about it, right? We talked a little bit about it, I think, in our tools video.
I've got a guide on how to do this.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 videos back for recessing irregular shaped drivers. There's no reason we can't cover it as a topic because I think it'd be a good topic. But it's a step-by-step guide. So
yeah, the step one: buy a CNC.
No, it does not require that. Just a router and some bearings or some bushing rather, and you're good to go.
All right, guys. Thanks again. We look forward to it, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye, guys.
Later.